Hello everyone! Today we are going to take a look at an episode of Beyond the Gates airing on April 14th that promises to be deeply emotional. While all of Fairmont Crest is still trying to maintain its familiar appearance of calm, beneath the surface, every family is facing stronger and stronger undercurrents. At the center of this time is Anita, a woman who has already endured months of exhausting battle with illness and is now forced to face an answer that could change the entire course of the life she still has ahead of her. But what makes this episode so gripping is not only Anita's health results. While she waits for news that could either lift her up or drag her down once again, everything around her is also beginning to crack in troubling ways. Smitty continues to hide the evidence right in front of Nicole, making the family atmosphere even more suffocating. While Bill no longer wants to stay silent as his suspicions about Haley keep growing. Everyone is trying to protect their own secret, but that very silence is making everything more dangerous than ever. The April 14th episode is therefore not only a new chapter in Anita's story, but also a moment when many tensions are being pushed higher at the same time. On one side there is the fear of losing hope, and on the other there is the pressure of lies, suspicion, and unanswered questions. And just when everything still seems to be under control, Beyond the Gates reminds us that it only takes one truth coming to light to completely overturn a person's world. In Fairmont Crest, some disasters do not arrive with a loud explosion, but with a chill running down your spine. As if someone has just cracked open a door that the whole family has been struggling to keep shut. Everything on the outside may still look beautiful, elegant, and perfectly suited to a community that lives by honor, discipline, and flawless appearances. But all it takes is one test result, one lie that has not yet been named, one tense exchange between husband and wife, or one seemingly small confrontation between two calculating people. And that entire order can begin to shake. And right now, the most frightening thing in Beyond the Gates is no longer the secrets that have already come out, but the ones still buried inside each person, waiting for a painful enough moment to destroy everything. Anita is standing at a moment that could change the rest of her life. Since late 2025, her fight against an aggressive form of breast cancer has not only worn down her body, but also eroded the pride of a woman who once served as the anchor for her entire family. For Anita, the greatest pain was never just the exhaustion after chemotherapy or the feeling that her own body had betrayed her. What has hurt her even more is having to accept that she no longer controls everything the way she once did. A woman who has survived so many storms in life, who helped keep the Dupree family standing through one collapse after another, now has to sit still and wait for a doctor to tell her whether life is still willing to remain on her side. That is a very quiet kind of helplessness, a very humiliating one for someone as strong as Anita. That is why the new update from her oncologist is not simply a medical result, it is an emotional verdict. If the chemotherapy has worked, then yes, it will be a ray of light after 4 dark months. It could help Anita breathe again, could ease the burden Vernon always hides in his eyes whenever he sees his wife exhausted, could give the whole family a reason to believe that miracles still exist. But the truth is, even if Anita receives good news, real peace may still be impossible for her. Because there are people who, after coming that close to death once, never look at life the same way again. They do not only fear the illness returning, they become sensitive to every shift in the family, every forced smile, every reassurance given too quickly, every silence that lasts a little too long. Anita may not know exactly what is happening yet, but she is experienced enough to sense that something in her home is not right. A mother and grandmother like Anita often does not need to hear the full truth to know that the truth is being hidden. That unease makes even more sense when we turn to Naomi. While Anita is waiting for an answer about her survival, Naomi is carrying a different kind of fear, quieter, but no less cruel. She is living with her family while hiding the fact that Jacob is not simply away at some ordinary training program. She has to convincingly play the role of a wife who knows her husband is fine, while deep inside, every hour is consumed by the fear of losing him. It is the kind of suffering that belongs to mature women, not allowed to collapse, not allowed to tell the full truth, and certainly not allowed to throw the family into panic. Naomi has to carry that reality alone, and the longer she stays silent, the heavier the burden becomes. If Anita truly senses that something is off with Naomi, it is not coincidence. It is the instinct of a woman who has lived long enough to know that the most frightening things in a family rarely arrive with loud crying, but with too much endurance. While Anita faces the fear of losing her life, another growing crisis in the house begins with trust being betrayed. Nicole has no idea that while she is busy dealing with Hackgate 2026, the person making everything dirtier and more dangerous is actually her own son-in-law. The tragedy here is not simply the technological angle, nor only the unauthorized access to hospital records. The deepest wound is that a woman like Nicole, who has always believed in order, decency, and structure, may soon have to face the fact that someone in her own family is the source of the chaos. Smitty crossed the line a long time ago. What is even more troubling is that he did not stop after the first mistake. He kept hiding, kept sinking deeper, kept putting himself in a position where he had to lie to protect something that perhaps even he no longer feels certain is worth protecting. The real question is not only whether Smitty should confess. The larger question is whether a confession now would mean redemption or simply be a way of easing his own guilt. Some mistakes, if admitted early enough, can save a family from a deeper fracture. But there are also truths that, once exposed, permanently change the way people see one another. Nicole may be able to forgive weakness, impulsiveness, even a bad decision made in panic. But what she may struggle to forgive most is the feeling of being deceived under her own roof. If she discovers that Smitty not only hacked the records, but used her own computer to do it, the shock will be more than anger. It will be the feeling of being insulted, exploited, and robbed of safety in the one place that should have been the most trustworthy. And in large families, a shock like that never stays between two people. It spreads quickly. It falls on Naomi and on everyone else already exhausted by other burdens. It raises questions about how they are all living together, what they are hiding, and who they are lying for. If Nicole keeps digging, she may uncover more than just a hack. Investigations in Beyond the Gates rarely stop at the surface. They usually drag out other layers of secrecy, other connections, and eventually turn a seemingly isolated act into proof of a much deeper fracture within the entire family. That is why Smitty's silence is no longer a wise choice. It is a ticking bomb. Elsewhere in Fairmont Crest, Bill is beginning to look at his marriage with different eyes. What is so interesting about Bill is that he has always liked seeing himself as the man who can read everyone else clearly. He is quick to suspect Lynette, quick to assume that someone like her is simply manipulating Haley for money. But ironically, that very confidence is what makes Bill blind to the woman beside him every day. When a man becomes too used to controlling the situation, he is often the last to realize he is being led. So the hard questions Bill asks Haley are not just an interrogation. They are the moment when his instincts begin telling him that something about the story in front of him does not fit. At first, he may still believe Lynette is the problem. But all it takes is for Haley to hesitate for a second too long, stay too vague on a detail, or seem just a little too perfectly innocent. And Bill will begin to understand that the real abnormality is not outside the marriage. It is inside it. Haley is dangerous because she understands the power of appearing fragile. She knows how to make herself look like the victim, how to make others believe she is being cornered, how to tell half-truths so that nothing is clear enough to convict her but nothing is clean enough to erase suspicion either. It is a highly effective form of self-protection, especially with men who like believing they are protecting a vulnerable woman. But that strategy only works as long as the other person is not truly looking at her through suspicious eyes. Once Bill starts putting the small pieces together, Haley's vague answers will become the strongest evidence against her. And what makes her position even more frightening is that her connection to Lynette may no longer be only about money. When someone allows another person to control them for that long, there is usually something deeper underneath: fear of exposure, an old debt, or a piece of the past she cannot allow Bill to touch. If Bill is the one beginning to suspect, Randy is the one who wants to act. On the surface, Randy seems like the kind of man who believes that if he is tough enough and determined enough, he can push Lynette out of town and end the whole thing. But that is exactly the mistake so many people make when dealing with someone like Lynette. A greedy woman who has survived this many crises is not the kind of person easily frightened away. She survives not only through shamelessness, but through an ability to read other people's weaknesses. The penthouse, the luxury hotel, Haley's money, the ring she kept like a trophy, all of it suggests that Lynette is no longer operating from the mindset of someone on the run. She is operating from the mindset of someone who has started to taste victory, and that is when she is most dangerous. Randy may enter this confrontation thinking he is protecting the people he cares about or dealing with a parasite. But if he underestimates Lynette, he will be the first one to pay for it. In a fight between someone who still thinks in normal moral terms and someone no longer bound by shame or limits, the advantage usually does not go to the more decent person, but to the more reckless one. Randy may rattle Lynette for a moment, but he could just as easily provoke the wrong woman and trigger a counterattack with another secret, another move, or even by dragging more people down into the mud. The most frightening thing about this storyline is that it does not threaten only Haley. It could pull Bill, Randy, and even people who think they are safely outside it into the same spiral. Amid all these schemes, the Chelsea and Naomi storyline brings a sorrow that is deeply feminine, very quiet, and very painful. Chelsea wants to be there for Naomi, wants to become a source of support for her sister when she needs it most. That desire is genuine. That love is genuine. But the problem with women carrying deep private wounds is that even the most sincere comfort cannot truly reach them unless it touches the real source of fear. Naomi is not simply sad because her husband is away. She is living with the terror that Jacob may not come back, while still having to make everyone believe this is only temporary. That kind of torment means that any encouragement, no matter how heartfelt, may still feel too light for the weight she is carrying. That is why Chelsea can try her best and still fail to make Naomi feel much lighter. Not because Chelsea does not understand love, but because she does not yet understand the full depth of the secret Naomi is carrying. There is a huge difference between comforting someone who is sad and walking beside someone who is living in real fear of loss. Naomi is no longer dealing only with loneliness. She also has to perform, to stay calm, to weigh every word so no one grows suspicious. For a woman exhausted to that degree, what she sometimes needs is not advice or positivity, but a place safe enough to speak the truth. And ironically, she does not have such a place right now. That is the deepest pain of all. Looking at the whole picture, it becomes clear that Beyond the Gates is no longer telling separate stories. The show is pushing each character into very clear tests of trust, endurance, and true nature when cornered. Anita must face the question of whether hope is still strong enough to pull her back into a full life. Nicole may soon have to learn that betrayal sometimes comes from the very people one calls family. Bill stands on the edge of realizing that the marriage he thought he controlled may have been built on layers of concealment. Randy may learn the hard way that recklessness is not always strength. Chelsea has good intentions, but she will be forced to understand that some pain cannot be eased simply by being present. And Naomi remains the most heartbreaking figure of all, a young woman carrying too much fear and silence just to keep the people she loves from collapsing with her. Perhaps what makes these developments strike older viewers even more deeply is that they are not just about drama. They are about very real parts of life, the body aging and betraying us, families loving one another but still hiding things, Marriage becoming the most dangerous place when trust is placed in the wrong person, and women so often being the ones forced to carry the heaviest burden just to keep the house from falling apart. Beyond the Gates understands that very well. The show does not need to be loud to hurt its audience. It only needs to place these women in the exact moment when they must choose between truth and false peace, between speaking out and continuing to endure, between holding on and letting go. That is when the story becomes most haunting. If this week truly is a turning point, then that turning point will not come through a scream or a sudden explosive reveal. It will come through changed expressions after hearing a result, through the heavier silence after a question, through a hand clenching when someone realizes they have been deceived, through the shaky breath of a woman trying not to cry because she still has to keep playing strong. Fairmont Crest will remain brightly lit, the houses will still be beautiful, the clothes will still be elegant, but beneath all of that calm, many hearts are standing right at the edge. And when a powerful family begins to crack from within, the first thing to collapse is usually not its reputation, but the sense of safety everyone once believed could never be lost. Thank you all for taking the time to watch my video, and thank you for your trust. Everything I share here is only personal speculation and my own opinion. If you have even more interesting thoughts, please leave them in the comments below. I truly value every contribution and every bit of support from you. Thank you so much. And if you have not followed us yet, please scroll down and hit the subscribe button.